I'm here with Mark Lane, who's Britain's first garden designer in a wheelchair. And he's also a presenter on BBC Gardener's World. So I've come to talk to him about his own garden and how he's designed it so that all of us can enjoy it, and how accessibility affects garden design. You may think that the issue of accessibility in a garden is only for people in wheelchairs or the partially sighted or someone with a chronic illness or mothers with small children or grannies. Mark is showing me round his own garden, as well as talking to me about how you design a garden that is beautiful and safe and welcoming.
It was one of those things whereby we wanted a space which we wanted to enjoy for 365 days of the year. So we first looked at all the exit points and where all the windows were. And once you know that is, you get these sort of sight lines. And then in order to make it achievable for me, being in a wheelchair, and for my partner who's more ambulant and can walk around, we had to think about how to use that space in two different ways in a way. Because I always say to people, you know, being at my height, what do you do when you normally go out into a garden? You go and sit down and have a cup of tea or something. So you're always looking through plants. Well, I'm constantly looking through plants. So for me, that's how I always perceive a garden. Where of course my partner Jason, who's much taller, is always sort of looking down onto plants and also through plants. So it's slightly different things going on. But we wanted to also divide the space up. So it's just under an acre. But we wanted to sort of divide it up so it makes you feel like there's more of it. And that's a really good little trick. If you want to have more, if it makes a space feel bigger, sort of break it up into sort of little rooms in a way. I also wanted to play with plants. So I've got a blue and yellow border, I've got white borders, I've got a grass border, etc. But for me getting around, we obviously needed something that was going to be easy to go down, be fairly cheap because it's a large size to do. So we actually went for gravel. Now, of course, everybody thinking about someone in a wheelchair, they think, gravel? Really? You must be mad. Well, actually, if you actually lay it right, which is to have a really good firm sub-base, which is called a type 1, it's basically like crushed stone that gets whacked down, so it goes really hard and really firm. And then we sprinkled on a layer of the gravel, and then we also whacked that into the type 1 below. And then we put another layer on top. So all you're actually going through is this little very thin layer of gravel on the top, and the gravel doesn't really move that much. So it's a little trick for people. Also, around most of the borders, what we've done, we've put a raised edge. Now, we've actually used timber raised edging that goes all the way around. And then we used a fence capping, actually, on top of it. So it creates like an L shape. And what that does is two things. One, it makes me aware of where the edge is. But secondly, more importantly, it actually hides an LED light that goes the whole route around the whole of the garden. So at night time, it looks like the whole of the garden is floating and the pathways just get washed with the light.
Paths too need to be wide enough so that two people can walk along them together. They need to be wide enough for a wheelchair, for a wheelbarrow, for a buggy, or perhaps for someone using a stick or a walking frame who's got someone else alongside them.
So around parts of the garden we've used privet hedging, which is really, really great. It does need a little bit more cutting than box hedging, so about 3 or 4 times a year. But we've used it for two reasons. One, it actually stops plants from falling over onto the pathways, but also it's been left at a height so that I can actually trim it. Seating in a garden or a public garden or wherever it might be is probably one of my little bugbears. What you normally see when you go to somewhere is that you get benches that are all of the same height. Even in private gardens, they're all of the same height, but we're all different heights. We all, our leg heights, leg lengths are different, our knee heights are different. So why don't we introduce more varied height seating within a single space? So in our white borders at the top end, we have a lovely little secluded seating area, which is under a lovely silver birch. and we have just a normal table and chairs, but it's a table which is a height that I can get under. Again, tables are really problematic.
Lighting is obviously a big safety issue, not just in accessible gardens, but for all of us. Mark says that you should think of your garden lighting the way you think of your lighting in your home. You'll need big spotlights where you need to do practical things like take out bins or clear away tables. You'll have accent lines to outline something like a tree or sculpture, and you need atmospheric lighting where you're going to sit.
So the front part of the garden is actually the last part of the garden we actually did. It's an area for me to where I can play with colour and play with texture. So we've got a little herb garden, we've got a blue and yellow border, we've got a white sort of garden in itself which is under a beautiful silver birch, and then there's a central water feature that comes down the middle, and then we've got a grass border, and then sort of a nod to my grandma who used to love growing roses. I've got a rose and peony border.
Like most garden experts, he really doesn't believe in what's called low maintenance gardening, but he does point out that grasses and perennials are usually easy care. You chop them down once a year and then they pop up again the next. In the end, Mark says that there's no such thing as a fully accessible garden because people's needs are so different, but he advises in thinking in a logical way about the needs of the person or group of people who are going to use the garden and who may use the garden in future, which of course includes you in 20 years' time. There are links to Mark Lane Garden Design in the description below, and Mark is also involved with a number of charities, including accessiblegardens.org, who have a directory of accessible public gardens. Let me know what you think, hit like if you think this is an important subject, and if you haven't subscribed to the Middlesized Garden YouTube channel, we upload on Saturdays with tips, ideas and inspiration for your middle-sized garden.